Hey everyone, welcome back to the YOUnify podcast. If you're new here, my name is Brandyn Keating, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of YOUnify, a nonprofit organization helping you flourish and thrive, and the host of our podcast. Today is a super special podcast. I am joined by Dr. Michael Kryzanek, who, in addition to being a brilliant professor of political science and author and activist or civic engagement professional, was also my college professor many moons ago, but not too many. So welcome, Dr. Kryzanek. So excited to have you here.
It's great to be here, Brandyn. And as I mentioned earlier, you are certainly one of my best students. So I'm happy to be here with a great graduate of Bridgewater State University. So.
Yes, was formerly Bridgewater State College, now Bridgewater State University. Thank you so much. So Dr. Kryzanek is a professor emeritus of political science and served as special assistant to the president of Bridgewater State University for global engagement and university priorities. He is the author of 9 books on U.S. foreign policy, American government, and comparative politics. His latest book was written with his daughter, Anne Kryzanek-Kareth, and it's United States Foreign Policy Global Hotspots. Dr. Kryzanek is a former board chair of Father Bill's and Mainspring, the largest homeless organization on the South Shore of Massachusetts. And he's also past president of the Rotary Club of the Bridgewaters. So Dr. Kryzanek, for listeners who may not be familiar with your work, or maybe, political science is kind of like a general term for some viewers. How would you describe what you do in the day-to-day?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because a lot of people wanted to know, why is it about politics or is it about science, and how do the two come together? But basically, what I define my role is to try to explain the world of politics and government in the United States and other countries around the world, and how individual citizens or groups of citizens participate in that political process, which we often call democracy in our country and around the world. So it's basically an explanatory process of giving people a better idea of how they fit into the political process in their country or their state or their region, whatever it might be. The science part, which I don't claim to be a great scientist, because there's a great deal of work being done by many of my colleagues trying to explain the world using data and using analysis of that data on voting and on decision making and on leadership and on civic engagement, which I think we'll probably talk about in this session here. So the two go together, but I'm probably more connected to the first part. And it's terribly important, I think, that people have a better understanding of how they fit in to the political world that's around them.
So important. And we'll definitely dig into that more. It's so critical. I think we both probably agree, so critical for everyday people to be involved in our politics. And yet it can feel a little bit alienating, especially in the current day. So I'm so excited that you're helping make it more accessible for folks.
Well, we live in a troubled world, a troubled political world, not just in our country, but many others countries as well. So it's important that people have a good understanding of how politics works or does not work, unfortunately, and how they can fit into that way of making decisions and trying to solve problems that affect a nation or a region or a state or a country or a town, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And you've written extensively over the years on American politics and foreign policy. Are there particular topics that have captured your interest most over the years?
Well, I think right now there's two things. One of the things that I do is work in Bridgewater State University's senior college or lifelong learning. So I teach a course every semester, and I'll join the summer as well, trying to get anybody who's over 55 to have an understanding of government politics and the like. I'm teaching a course next week starting on the Declaration of Independence and try to get a better understanding working with the seniors that are there. Is all part of lifelong learning, which I think is an important part of what many universities and colleges are doing in the United States. Is that bring seniors who are retired or are not involved in a particular job to use their free time to inform themselves and expand their understanding of government and politics. The other side of this, because you have the sign there, is YOUnify. I'm also involved in civic engagement. I write a blog, which I think you know a little bit about, that generally goes to a younger generation that explains a lot of what's going on and tries to get them involved in our democracy and in our way of life and in our political process. So kind of both ends of the spectrum there, the seniors on one end and the young people or youth on the other end. I think that's a good match and a good connection there as well.
Yeah, I love that sort of intergenerational idea of ensuring that we have civics and civic engagement, learning about politics, happening at all these different stages of our lives. It's not just for one stage. I'm curious about what you think draws the seniors into your class. I mean, obviously, college age students have the motivation of trying to build a career and get ahead of in the world and so forth. But for seniors who maybe can kind of do anything with their time, have they shared with you at all what's drawing them to the courses?
Well, no, you're right. A lot of it is that there's some free time there, but also is that they're very, very much interested in what's happening around them in the political world, whether certainly with regard to the United States and certainly with regard to war and peace and many aspects of how our country works or doesn't work, and how they can get a better understanding of our democracy. And what happens in our classes that I shouldn't say this a lot, but I don't have to do a lot of work because they do a lot of the talking and offer questions and express their opinions. They show up on time. Not that younger people don't, but it's a very dynamic situation where I may pose a question or discuss something that is topical, and then they offer their point of view, which is usually very, very good and helpful to the other people in the class who interact with them. And so it's a dynamic situation and a very, very good one, and one that I think is helpful to everyone in the class to get a different perspective. Obviously, we have some people who are liberal, some people who are conservative, some people who are Democrats, some people who are Republicans. So there's a good mix there. And I must say, one of the things that is very, very helpful is that many of the people in the class are women, are female. And I think are given the opportunity for the first time many times to share their points of view rather than be dominated by some old guy who feels he has the answer. I shouldn't be so critical of old guys, but I'm most impressed with many of the younger women in class, over 55, obviously. Yeah. Some of these women are in their 70s. We even have some that are in their 80s. So it's our president, Fred Clark, who graduated in 83. I forget to ask when you graduated. Maybe you don't want to give your age away, but Fred Clark is a student
long
of mine.
After 83. Fred was a student of yours? That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, he was a student of mine, along with other people in his administration, and he's been very, very focused on the importance of lifelong learning and senior college. And so he and I worked together on this. As even though I'm retired and emeritus, I do have this new career working on one side with seniors and writing a blog that generally is associated with younger people. at Bridgewater State and those not at Bridgewater State who read the blog or are interested in my thoughts.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up that it's a place for women to be more engaged, even though maybe that's not the intent. It's fascinating to me that as somebody who facilitates a lot of conversations about public policy and the change that folks might want to make in the world, that even in 2026, it's still culturally the case that many women and many people of all genders were sort of brought up that it's not polite to talk about politics. So
That's right. Yep.
curating these kind of spaces where it's the norm, and I think some listeners, some viewers might be surprised to hear that you're having such constructive conversations in a multi-partisan setting. And of
Yep.
course, that's something we cultivate a lot in YOUnify. But I'm curious about your perspective, where folks are coming from different parts of the political spectrum, maybe not expecting that they're going to be having conversations across differences, but more that they're going to be learning something. Are there certain things that help keep the conversation constructive and civil that you found are working well in the class?
Yeah, I think what happens is that if X person, whether it's a male or female, says something in relationship to a question that I might pose, what often occurs is that there is a give and take there, and sometimes we have a couple of people who obviously will remain unnamed here, who obviously express their opinion in a way that generates a negative response from some others who feel that person is way off the beaten track, and that generates again a response and a way to develop a good debate. I mean, this is a senior college, but it's also a debating society in many respects. As differences of opinion are expressed, I try to be the ringleader and the organizer of this debate, so that by the end of the class, that there's perhaps some level of agreement or understanding that is critical for Americans in this age to function effectively as citizens. Citizenship is a very, very important part of what American life is about and democracy is about. And so I think this class is good for that. And people leave there, I'm proud to say, with a better understanding of their role as citizens in a democracy.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to that concept in a minute. Before I do, we've used the term civic engagement quite a bit, and that can be kind of an esoteric term for folks. I'm wondering, what do you think it means in everyday life? How would you define civic engagement, just like in the day-to-day?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and my blog appears in Bridgewater State University's civic engagement site,
Hmm.
which is largely a student-run site or student-directed site. And what I try to do, and what this site and civic engagement tries to do, is to get young people, college and university students, involved in government and the process of decision making, whether it's an internship, whether it is perhaps speaking out as an activist, whether it is protest, as sometimes is the case, to recognize that it is important that young people get involved in government and politics, especially at this time where there's a great deal of polarization and differences of opinion. It's important that young people understand the arguments, understand where they fit into this, and to have a better understanding of how they can affect change and bring about some kind of better civic life for our country and our world.
Yes, phenomenal. And so if I'm not a student, if I'm, maybe, like a mom or just, somebody who maybe doesn't have children, but is, working in the professional world or not, if I'm one of your students who's maybe over 55, what does civic engagement mean for me? What could I do tomorrow that would make me more civically engaged if I maybe didn't know where to begin?
Well, certainly the regular argument is to vote, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. I think people participate effectively by casting their ballot, whether it's for president or senator, or state rep, or even a local official. But it's more than that. It's getting involved in ways that I think create a better community
Mm-hmm.
that people can live in. I talk about local education. It's important that our high schools and our middle schools, even our elementary schools, have an understanding that the young people have an understanding of where they fit in this society that they live in. Civic life is very important. Civics is very important. More and more states are requiring civics as a course, and Massachusetts, as example, is one of them. And it's important that people have that understanding. There's nothing wrong with taking a math course or a reading course or a science course, but for many years we've kind of ignored the civic life and civic understanding and democracy
Yeah.
and participation and voting. And so what I've tried to do, and I'm not the only one, there's many others out there, to try to advance the understanding that young people have through civic discourse, civic engagement. More and more, we're seeing younger teachers involved in civics and
Mm-hmm.
providing young people with a better understanding of how they fit into the civic life. So that it's important that we have that kind of uh, participation, intellectual participation. Again, nothing wrong with math or science or
Yeah.
reading or the like, but we need that extra part there, especially these days where there is so much division, so much misunderstanding, so much disinformation,
Mm.
so much conflict, that it is important that people have a much better understanding of why that occurs and what they could do in order to make civic life not only more peaceful but more productive.
Yeah, so really understanding how the government systems that impact the policies that affect our daily lives are operating, discussing with others our points of view, and being able to participate, whether it's by talking to somebody else or building community, by voting or by getting involved in some activism or advocacy. And your blog, which you mentioned, is a really great tool for people to get started. It's called Simply Civics, right?
Yep.
So Simply
You
Civics.
you hit on one of my pet peeves is that I just put up just the other day my four best movies out of Hollywood that express a better understanding of civic and civic life.
Ooh,
I'm not going to put you on the mark here what they are, but it's Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington,
love it.
a young naive a U.S. senator trying to fight against evil, sketchy, land grabbing people who are in the Senate with him. Lincoln, with
Hmm.
Daniel Day-Lewis, who won the Academy Award for Best Actor, playing Lincoln and describing how Lincoln had the 13th Amendment, which was did away with slavery, and what he did in order to advance the 13th Amendment. Then we have election with Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick, who is she's a Hillary Clinton like high school student. I'm not saying she is Hillary Clinton, who wants to become the president of her class, and she's running against the jock football player who's supported by kind of a corrupt civics teacher who has it against Reese Witherspoon in an election. And so the whole story is about those two interacting and the vote that is taken. The civics teacher eventually cheats on the final vote total and throws out two ballots, which would get Reese the victory. A janitor cleaning up the classroom finds the two votes and gives it to her, and so she wins the election, which is why the movie is called The Election. And then the last one, which is the favorite of many people, and unfortunately a favorite, is Dr. Strangelove. with
Oh.
George C. Scott and Peter Sellers and a lot of other people dealing with nuclear weapons, the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, not Russia at that time, but the Soviet Union over thermonuclear war and the competition between both countries over the use of weapons. The subtitle is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Love the Bomb.
Mm.
I don't think any of us want to love the bomb, but in the world we live in now, it's quite possible that nuclear weapons could enter into the dialogue, as they have already with regard to Iran. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that can't be pushed aside. That can't be pushed aside as irrelevant, because we live in a conflict right now over nuclear weapons and nuclear grade materials that has brought the United States and Iran to war. Mm-hmm. So it's an important part, and the movie ends with a General King Kong, as he's called, riding a thermonuclear bomb. He's all dressed up as a cowboy, and he's whooping it up, but the thermonuclear device is headed right towards the Soviet Union, suggesting that maybe this would be the end of our civilization. So it's not a happy movie, let's put it that way, but one that it's important that people have an understanding that nuclear weapons and nuclear power is a very, very dangerous part of the world we live in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I love that as part of how you are helping to simplify civics, government, civic engagement for folks. Film is such a great vehicle for us to get that better understanding. And so Simply Civics is the blog. So everybody should check that out. We'll have the link down in the description below on YouTube. And we'll also have it in our link in bio across socials. So invite everybody to check that out, which is posted on the Bridgewater State University website, which is part of the UMass system, and also on Substack.
I appreciate the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, folks, if you are enjoying the podcast, you feel like it's enriching you, we invite you to click that subscribe button, click the like button to help it get to more eyeballs. We'd love to hear your comments and what you're thinking about current events. Is there something you are doing to be involved, or something that you wish you could do or would like to really know more about how to do? Please drop it in the comments, and we'll also have the information linked about our Write the Future campaign, where you can get together with folks in your local community to imagine the hopeful future and take concrete action steps toward it. So Dr. Kryzanek,
Brandyn, I'll just say this real quickly, is that I say this to all my students: if you have a question, send me an email. Be happy to respond.
Awesome.
As I would to you. And so, it's mkryzanek at bridgew.edu. So maybe It's there as well. But anyway, be happy to respond.
That's phenomenal.
Not that I have all the answers, but I can respond.
Certainly a lot of them. And so we'll put that in the description as well. Fantastic. So we were talking a minute ago about the concept of being a good citizen and citizenship. And of course, when we're saying that, we're not talking about legal status. We're talking about the term citizen in terms of like how we're operating in public life. And so I would love to hear more from you about what you think it means to be a good citizen and how people can do that.
Yeah, as I said earlier, just real quickly, it's more than just voting. It's I think service to the country. I don't mean military service, although that's an important part of it. But I think you may remember, our viewers might remember President Kennedy saying it: mm-hmm. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And that was clearly an example of the importance that Americans need to have in terms of giving back to their community, whether it's the United States, whether it's a state, whether it's a community, to go to meetings that have an impact on schools or on the spending of money.
Yes.
To participate in demonstrations and protests. And I don't mean that's critical, but I mean it's important that people have an understanding how their voice can make a difference, and how they can participate in our process more beyond just voting
Yes.
for a candidate or candidates. Is do something, participate. We often just kind of sit home at night. We have our pizza delivered. We have watch television shows, whether it's sports or whether it's
Start
music,
scrolling.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is, I think people spend too much time away from their community.
Yeah, so more time engaging with others, more time
Right.
in dialogue and participation. And so much happens at the local level in politics that really impacts our daily lives. So it can be very accessible, right, in the community.
Right.
I want to key in on something that you said, you were talking about doing more than voting, which is super important, right? And at the same time, our vote is our currency. Our vote helps. The fact that we are registered to vote and we are voting helps ensure that our elected officials will pay attention to us. And so for taking that first step, I know you've written and talked about some of the barriers to voting. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what are some of the barriers to voting and what should we do about it?
Sure. Well, one of the key, I won't call it a barrier, but certainly it's a controversial part of a public policy, and that's called a SAVE Act, SAVE,
Mm-hmm.
which the Republican Senate and House is pushing, which means that you have to be a citizen in order to vote, and you have to prove your citizenship with some kind of document, a birth certificate or a passport. You just can't use your license or your credit card. And this has become controversial. We don't have it yet because it's kind of stalled in Congress as both sides fight over it. Because many people are of the opinion, primarily the Democrats, that if you're married and you changed your name, you will not be able to vote unless you're able to prove that you changed your name and have documentation that you're no longer Mary Smith, but you're Mary Keating. Let's just say. And so that's really out there right now. It's probably one of the most controversial voting concerns that people have. As I say, there is no SAVE Act at the present time, but certainly that's up there. And then you have what is often called voter suppression, and my Republican friends, and I'm not just pointing to them, but that they seem to be in the forefront of making it more difficult for people to register to vote, to have an opportunity to actually get into the voting place without a great deal of limitations because of time or weather or whatever it might be. And then you have the more controversial aspect of it is that the Trump administration is talking about placing ICE officials, police, in voting centers, and which is a little bit concerning to many people because what you usually have is one police officer with a cup of coffee, and I'm not criticizing a police officer with a cup of coffee, just standing around making sure that everybody's behaving themselves.
Right.
But if you put ICE officials who have long guns and pepper spray and handcuffs standing in a voting booth, that is intimidation. And that has not yet happened. But if we move to that kind of voter suppression, I think a lot of people would be intimidated by having that kind of ICE presence. Hopefully, we'll solve both of the SAVE Act issue and also the ICE presence in voting places, which are all part of what is often described as voter suppression.
Got it. So folks should pay attention, look for opportunities to advocate for you with your elected officials against the SAVE Act and against that kind of intimidation or voter suppression, so that we all can maintain our ability to vote and have our votes counted. And now you are really walking the walk of civic participation. You have participated. You have served on a local school board. You've been involved with your Rotary Club as a board member of homeless shelters, which we mentioned at the top. And I'm curious if you can just share briefly with folks what particularly the experience of serving on a school board taught you about local government and community dynamics?
Sure. Well, you use the right word. It is service, and those people who participate, whether it's at Father Bill's, the homeless shelter, or the Rotary, or the school committee, it's giving your time as a student, not as a student, giving your time as a citizen to participate in decisions that have an impact on the community where you live. The school committee, as example, having an impact on curriculum, having an impact on budget, having an impact on leadership. And the 6 years that I was on the school committee, we generally had a fairly quiet time in terms of what is best for the young people in our community.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening these days, though, unfortunately, there's a lot of open hostility over issues that are not necessarily academic or finance, but gender issues, as an example, bathroom issues, as another example, issues of racial discrimination, issues of individual leadership in a community, who best knows what's good for the students. Is it a teacher or is it a parent who doesn't want their child to be influenced by the thinking of a teacher or an administrator who might not provide guidance in a way that a parent might want to. And so you have that kind. You have sometimes called a helicopter parent, but you have more and more aggressive parental involvement over issues that are not necessarily just academic or spending, but are issues that are social and cultural. And personal, and that's how education has changed, and that's why being a member of a school committee is not an easy job anymore. When I had it, it was generally people working together trying to solve a particular problem. These days, it's people getting together to deal with a lot of anger that's out there, a lot of attempt to stop what some people consider to be excessive involvement of liberals. Or Democrats or people. I'll just use it as an example because that's what's generally out there. Is a criticism of what we often use the word woke, WOKE, decisions that are viewed as excessively tolerant or decisions that are not associated with people following a more rigid steps in our society, rigid actions that often bring about people's anger. Again, I use gender as an example, or LGBTQ and racial discrimination, and in immigration. I forgot about that. Individuals who may come from another country and are not necessarily through with the decisions of amnesty or are part of citizenship, and so they become a center of attention of why they should even be in school. Why should money be spent for them when they're not completely citizens? Because when they haven't gotten their amnesty through, or whether they are not recognized as full and complete citizens. So there's a lot of issues out there that are different from my time when, as I say, when it was largely how many teachers are going to be let go, what would be the budget that we're going to have, what kind of languages would we teach? Was it just be Spanish or French, or would it not even be those kinds of things? Now it's, as I mentioned, much more complicated.
Yeah, well, and certainly becoming a flashpoint for conversations that maybe are driven by outside forces that are seeking to divide us, and maybe maybe that makes it even more important today for everyday people not to be alienated by that contentiousness, but to show up and to refocus the conversation on those things that are important to the mechanics of the school, and get more reasonable voices into the room to sort of blunt those outside forces. Dr.
You know,
Kryzanek.
and I have to say this, Brandyn, is that I can't really criticize a parent for wanting to have an impact and an influence on their child's education. It just goes overboard many times and critical of teachers who are only trying to do their job and have the expertise in order to how to deliver history or how to deliver economics, whatever it might be. But quite often we see parents just crossing a red line that they never did when I was a school committee person, trying to create a tension with the school system because they disagree with the point of view that has been generally accepted as what is good teaching and what is good a good development of the mind.
Well, Dr. Kryzanek, our time has absolutely flown by.
Well, that went fast.
I know. We're going to have you back on to share more of your wisdom because we've only scratched the surface. But I do have one last question for you, which is sort of a lightning fast question. So if people who have been listening, watching, are feeling inspired, they want to be more civically engaged, is there just one thing you would recommend, like one quick, simple action that they could take when they get done listening or watching this podcast?
I think two things. I think first of all, pay attention, and that is, read the newspapers, the magazines, watch the news, be aware of what's going on in the world around you, which is statewide and international wide. But also spend some time going to events in your town, in your community. There's so much going on. It's not just the so-called town meeting or school committee meetings. There are so many other opportunities for people to get engaged with their community that they live in. It's not that difficult. It just takes some time. But as I mentioned earlier, too many people just would like to stay home and kick off their shoes, have a cold beer, and not really leave the house because they don't want to leave the house. They want to watch television, and not that there's anything wrong with television, but the point is there's so much that is necessary for people to get involved to try to make their community a better place to live if they only pay attention, if they only get involved.
Yes. Well, certainly super important for us to get out and be interacting with one another. And if we are at the moment where we're kicking off the shoes and having the beer, we now have a good watch list that you have provided us for civic engagement. So thank you for...
And you've got the sign up there, YOUnify. YOUnify. You come together and work together as a community to try to make things better for young people, for seniors, for working people. But it's important that we have a more unified nation. And the way to do that is for people to get involved and express their point of view and try to work together to solve whatever problem may be in need of being solved.
Absolutely. Getting together and problem solving is key to our civic life. Thanks again so much for joining us. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and we will see you next time. I love that you have these